As economist CVs go, it would be hard to find a more stellar one than Professor Joseph Stiglitz. He's been chief economist of the World Bank, chairman of the American President's Council of Economic Advisors. Oh, and by the way, he won a Nobel Prize for economics. But he's certainly no fan of the current president's economic policies, and he doesn't think much of the trade deal Keir Starmer's just signed with the United States. In fact, he reckons we're being taken for a ride. How important is the deal that we signed with the United States this week?
Well, any agreement with Trump isn't worth the paper it's written on.
Right.
The U.S. signed an agreement with Canada and Mexico during Trump's first administration. One of the first things he did when he became president was to rip it up and impose 25% tariffs against Canada and Mexico. So I wouldn't view it as a great achievement. In fact, I would view it as playing into Trump's strategy. His strategy is divide and conquer, go after the weakest countries, and sort of put the stronger countries in the back. So who are the strong countries? Well, obviously, China has not reacted in a conciliatory appeasement way. China has responded with high tariffs and made it very clear that U.S. is very dependent on China in so many ways, including rare earths and minerals. So they're beginning now to negotiate, but from a position of strength.
I noticed this week you wrote that if each nation within Europe genuflects at the foot of the emperor, Trump will have the advantage. Do you think that our body language, if I can put it that way, our government body language towards the White House could be described as appeasement?
Yes, I think it is. I think, negotiations, you got something. I don't want to say you walked away empty, but the analyses I've seen, and let me make clear, I haven't done those analyses. I'm not sure.
We haven't seen the detail.
Nobody's seen the full detail. Look like in the way that Trump evaluates things, the U.S. won. But let me make it clear that this whole trade war, the U.S. is losing. We're losing in terms of global respect. We're losing in terms of huge uncertainty, global markets that are impacting us in a very negative way. We're losing in soft power, in the respect for the United States, who used to uphold the rule of law and no longer does that.
Mr. Trump would say that, Stiglitz would say that because he's the sort of advisor who allowed everybody else to take advantage of the United States. And the United States was robbed by the EU, robbed by Canada, robbed by Mexico. And actually, it's all your fault.
Yeah. Look, at the international trade architecture that has been created over the last 80 years was largely written by the United States, dictated by the United States. EU was part of the deal, but as chief economist of the World Bank, I looked at it from a global point of view. And what I saw very clearly, it was written by the United States, for the United States, or more accurately, for our large corporations, for our large financial institutions, to our advantage and to the disadvantage of much of the rest of the world. Now, what is clear and what is right is it was not written for the advantage of the ordinary American. It was not written for the advantage of the American workers. But you look at, for the country as a whole, for our corporations, we were the ones that wrote it. And for those in the rest of the world to hear the U.S. complain after we wrote those rules is a gobsmacking.
Do you think we should, as Britain then, if you feel that essentially, to some extent, we're being taken for a ride by this White House, should we start to put our chips on building the relationship with the EU?
Very much so. I mean, my view is that if you had worked with the EU to get a good deal, you could have done better than what you've done.
But to some extent, the sort of deal that we're now into with the United States over, for example, steel, perhaps cars and tariffs, perhaps precludes making a deal with the EU. Would you say we have made the wrong bet here?
Yes, I think so. Partly because a deal with Trump isn't, as I said before, worth the paper it's written on. And if it, it's a one-sided thing. If it turns out, at the end, when you work it all out, Trump is unhappy, he'll renege. If you're unhappy, I pray for you.
China, that's a main target of Mr. Trump's trade policy, supposedly. Do you think this tariff policy has a chance of working? I think you're sceptical.
Very much. I mean, where he begins, and there's a little bit of grain of truth in this, is he's concerned with the deindustrialization of the United States that began 45 years ago, before even the rise of China. But of course, China has been a very big part of that deindustrialization. The question is, will those jobs come back now? I was just in China a few weeks ago, went to a car factory, EV. It was built in 1 year. 2,000 workers make 1,000 cars a day, and most of those workers are just watching the robots put the car together. After the factory really gets going, they won't need so many workers. Half the workers are engineers. And that's the thing that I came away with realizing. China today has a comparative advantage in engineering. They have more engineers than the United States.
Growth has been anemic right across the West. Our government has put a big bet on solving our economic problems through growth. Do you think that Rachel Reeves is doing the right things to restore growth here?
Well, let me say first, I agree the right strategy is to focus on growth. The alternative strategy is austerity, get the budget down, and there's some mythical confidence that arises from getting the deficit down and that economy grows. That austerity strategy has failed virtually everywhere. So beginning to focus on growth is correct. When you start thinking about growth, there are two parts of this: demand side, supply side. On the demand side, you have to have a strong enough budget. And there are questions: is there a strong enough budget? And that may mean running deficits. No comparison between what the U.S. can do and the U.K. can do. U.S. has the ability to run bigger deficits than the U.K. Yeah. And that's where judgment, I don't want to make a judgment of whether she is going as aggressively as she could.
Well, one thing that we do debate here very, very actively is whether the fiscal rules that she has imposed on herself, no borrowing, except for day-to-day expenditure and so on, whether those fiscal rules are essentially an effective platform for growth or whether they've become a corset that is strangling growth. What do you reckon?
Well, I always view these things in a broader context, that most governments have scope for lots of different instruments that can help promote growth. For instance, you can raise taxes on capital gains, on land. And so if you have what I call a balanced budget expansion, raise taxes on the wealthy and expand government spending, that will stimulate the economy. Another example, how you spend the money. Some areas of spending have more what we call fiscal multipliers than others, so they stimulate the economy more. And more importantly, some kinds of expenditure really have bigger supply side effects and lead to more growth than other kinds of expenditure.
You're reckoning she could be more flexible. If I may just quickly ask you one last question. The big, if you like, political issue here still remains immigration. And that's been true in the United States. Politics demands essentially a halt to immigration. Most people would say, demands continued migration. Can that circle ever be squared by any government?
Well, my view is one needs to manage immigration. But
everybody says that's what they're going to do.
Everybody says, but you can do it better. Some countries, Canada has, for the most part, managed its immigration much better than many other countries. When the people immigrate, they integrate them into the community. They've taken a stronger stance in trying to make sure that the immigrants have higher skills that the country really needs, so that it helps boost both demand and supply. Remember, when you have immigrants, they're both sides of the equation. They give you more demand, and they also, particularly if they give you skills that you don't have, they really can help the supply side.
So you'd be against a sort of massive clampdown on immigration?
Oh, we need it in the United States. I don't know as much about where your economic position is, but I would suspect that you too also need it. But I can tell you, in the United States, we can't survive without our immigrants.
Joseph Stiglitz, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.